Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Get Crystallized show. I'm your host, Coach Crystal, and I am super excited because I have an amazing guest here today, Gupinder. She is a health coach helping people to reverse their diagnosis of prediabetes in just 90 days through her Healthy Habit Rewire program. I'm really excited about this because she's going to be sharing 3 things that you need to do to reverse a diagnosis of prediabetes. So can we please give a round of applause? I call her Gups to Gups. Woohoo! Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Coach Crystal. I am so honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm more than happy to share my knowledge today.
I love your purpose. Being in the health and wellness industry myself, so many people, they get that scare. So I would love to know, how did this come about? Like, how did this passion to serve people to reverse diabetes, how was that birthed?
Well, I'm actually a pharmacist by background. So I've been working as a pharmacist for the last 15 years in the NHS, which is a free health service, national health service in the UK. And I'm also a South Asian myself, as you can see. So my risk factors for developing diabetes are really, really high. I did a prescribing course as part of my pharmacy degree, and I specialized in diabetes. So I was giving a lot of healthy living advice, as well as medication advice on patients with diabetes. But the one thing that frustrated me in the job was that I just didn't have enough time to go through in detail what healthy habits, healthy lifestyle, eating healthy, exercising. I just didn't have the time to cover it all in enough detail. And with the pressures in the NHS, I didn't have enough time. Like, people couldn't rebook an appointment with me soon enough for me to keep them accountable and to really help and support them in their journey. So that's why I'm doing health coaching now, because I feel like I can give my time to actually help people to create a change in the way that they live, to adopt a healthier lifestyle, and to actually have a good chance at reversing prediabetes, because it is 100% possible. The other thing that kind of inspired me even more was, when you're busy in a job like mine, you tend not to look after yourself. So although I'm South Asian and I've got risk factors, when I was working as a pharmacist, I wasn't actually practicing what I was preaching to my patients. And so that was huge for me, because I'm telling all this advice, I'm telling people to do this, eat in a certain way, but I'm not doing it myself. And so I kind of went through my own personal journey as well to, get control over my health, to reduce my own risk factors, so that I can really appreciate what people go through when I'm helping them, because I've done it myself, so that's kind of where it's taken me.
There's a few things that I want to point out there. You being South Asian, and I'm come from a Filipino background. I have to say, within our culture as well, diabetes is so common. And I have to attribute that to the fact that, at least in the Filipino culture, like in the Asian culture, my parents exercising, it wasn't a common thing. And the cultural foods that we eat, super high in fat. Rice is a staple, and literally breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. And the amount of food, there is no such thing as portion control, right? And so all of that, I agree with you, where so many of our listeners, it also could be a cultural influence. The traditional foods that they eat has led them to be pre-diabetic, and the fact that maybe exercise wasn't the norm growing up in their families, especially like in our parents' generation. And I appreciate you admitting, because I know you went through our mindset coaching program. I think that's the part where where you really thrived. I've just seen you blossom, and I appreciate you saying, you know what, I need to practice what I preach, because nothing, and I've been through it myself. When my husband years ago was diagnosed with depression, and he gained weight because of the medication that he was taking. You know how men will gain weight when their wife is pregnant. It's like what do they call it? Empathy weight, right?
Yeah.
Sympathy
Yeah.
weight. I did the same with my husband. When my husband was not well and he gained weight, I also put my health aside and I gained weight alongside with him and used food, admittedly, as an emotional regulator. And that's another reason why I think it's very common to develop prediabetes, because people use food for comfort as opposed to food for fuel. So, I really, really want to honor you for taking your own health in your own hands and saying, here I am advising these people. I need to practice what I preach. So I just want to honor you for doing that. And I find it so also honorable, the fact that you being with a background in pharmaceuticals, what drew me when I first met you was that you admitted to me you're in pharmaceuticals, but you don't want to necessarily have to depend on medication. You want to actually, help people with their diet and exercise. And that is not exactly normal, right? Like those
I know so many people.
Right?
Yeah, so many people ask me that question. Is it a conflict what you're doing? And it's 100% not. Because actually, when you're practicing as a pharmacist and you're advising people, the number one thing that people say to me is, I don't want to take this tablet. I don't want to take this medication. What are the side effects? Can I ever come off this medication? And we can't ignore that. Like, that's a real thing. And so if somebody's coming and there is a way that they can avoid taking medications, then, we need to help them to be able to do that.
That is amazing.
It's another option. It's another option. And actually, we'd rather have people healthy, and we'd rather prevent these things from happening. Because once you get a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, it's very, very difficult to reverse it. It's possible, but it's very hard, because 60% of your pancreas has stopped working, it's stopped functioning, and you cannot get that pancreas reworking again. Those cells are dead. So it is very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult. But when somebody's in a pre-diabetic state, it is proven that it is reversible, and you can do it in 90 days.
Well, here's the thing. I've never met a pharmacist or anyone with, whether it be a medical background or background and knowledge in diabetes, that has really encouraged people. There is a way. You don't need to take medication. Honestly, when you shared that with me, I'm like, that is the first time I've ever heard. I know a few pharmacists and those in the medical field, and it's rare for them to say, well, you need to eat proper, you need to move more. And so I love that you have put this ray of hope for people who are diagnosed with prediabetes, because it's scary. They're scared. And so let's jump right in. I'm really excited to learn what those 3 things are. I know we're going to go high level, and if people want to work with you to really dig deep, we'll give them that opportunity. But I'm really excited to learn these 3 things. So what's the first thing that people need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump in. So the first thing that people need to do is change the way that they eat. It sounds simple, but actually what you alluded to in terms of, that cultural eating, and it being full of carbs, and, in our Indian culture, we eat a lot of fried foods and a lot of sweet things. And, when you go to somebody's house, they will have food in abundance for you, and that's their way of welcoming you.
And I have to say, your desserts are amazing, but so sweet. Like a lot of women who I have served that are of the same descent, they definitely they say it's because of all the sweets. There's so many sweets at all of the functions, and when people come over, they serve sweets. When they go over to people's houses, they serve sweets. So what do you do? How do you change that if that is your culture? What do you do?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's educating people is the first thing. Educating people on what they should be eating more of on a daily basis when they're not meeting their, family and friends. They don't have a function. So that, Monday to Friday, at least, they're strict on what they're eating. They're eating more vegetables, they're eating more protein, they're eating more, you know, that the rainbow of the vegetables. We call it 5 a day here in the UK. So 5 a day of fruit and vegetables, all different colors, mixture of different colors, and reducing the amount of carbohydrates. And so like yourself, we eat a lot of rice, and we also eat a lot of chapatis, which are made from sort of chapati flour. And, you know, and it's just getting people to understand that those type of foods break down into sugars in your body. And that's what puts people at risk of diabetes. And so it's cutting those foods back, the carbohydrates, cutting them back, making sure that they're eating them at the right time and not eating them at times of the day where actually they're just going to sit in your body and, you know, and just accumulate into fats. And, you know, really getting them to understand what low GI foods are. So low glycemic index foods. And that means foods that are lower in sugar content. And so, for example, carbohydrates, if you choose brown bread over white bread, for example, it's got the brown bread has a lower GI index. Just to explain what GI index is in a little bit more, it's on a scale of 0 to 100, and 100 being glucose, which is 100% sugar. So foods with a lower GI index are the ones that have got less sugar in it. So, you know, you're looking at between 0 and 20 is the lower end, whereas if you're getting up towards the hundreds, then that's obviously like 100% sugar that you're eating, which is all the sweets that we have in our Indian culture. So it's people understanding what are the healthier choices to make, and choosing those lower GI foods as far as possible, most of the time, so that when you do then have a function and you don't have an option about what you're eating, or you go to somebody's house and you don't want to be rude by not accepting their, you know, their very loving way of feeding you, then it doesn't knock you off your goals. It doesn't put you at that risk. It doesn't increase the weight, you know, increasing your weight and your risk factors of getting diabetes. So that's kind of a baseline where to start.
It's basically that 80-20 rule, right? That 80-20 rule. I love it. And so do you provide, you know, how do you keep your clients accountable, especially for someone like, I'm thinking of my dad. He would, like, you know, you would think, okay, you would have some type of knowledge, but is there like a list that you would provide? Like, how would you help someone who's never been aware of, you know, keeping tabs on that? How would you keep them accountable?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it all goes back to education. So explaining how to eat using the foods that they're already eating. So, for example, when we're making vegetable curries, our curries are actually very healthy. They've got things like turmeric and ginger and garlic in there, and, you know, and all these spices are actually really good for you, like, you know, fresh spices that we use. However, you know, people put too much oil in there. They put too much salt in there. They'll, you know, bulk it up to with potatoes, which are carbs. Right. So actually, if you just simply said to somebody, you know, when you're preparing your foods, you're making home cooked meals, which is great. Carry on doing that. But instead of using oils, you can make your food with water, add water to it instead, just cut the oils out. And if you're going to use oils, use, you know, the healthier oils, like either the One Cow sunflower sprays or rapeseed oil or something like that. Reduce the salt right back, you know, and take the potatoes out. So, you know, you could make a mixed veg curry with lots of different vegetables, different colors of vegetables. And that would be a really healthy meal if you took out the fat, the salt, and the potatoes out of it, you know. It's a really simple way of explaining to somebody how they can, so that they don't feel like they're making a massive change in what they're eating. They're just tweaking certain things, and making it practical for them, I think, is the key. And meeting them where in the type of foods that they're eating, and trying to explain to them, you know, have more of your lentils, you know, the dals that we eat, that they're really good. Fill yourself up more on those things rather than the chapatis and the rice, you know. Only put maybe 1 or 2 spoons of rice on your plate rather than filling the whole plate with rice.
Exactly.
You know, like just things like that.
It's how it is in the Filipino culture. Like, you'll see a plate and it's all white rice. The whole thing.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. And then you have like a dollop of, you know, the actual like meat. And you're right. Same, very similar to the Filipino culture. You'll have, you know, potatoes in that dish as well on top of the rice. So it's carb upon carb upon carb. And I love that you said you're not asking your clients to, you know, remove it. Like, no, it's not a restrictive diet.
Right.
It's more like, what can we do to make what you're currently eating healthier?
Exactly that.
So it's because I feel like sometimes, you know, my dad, as an example, I don't know, can you teach a dog dog new tricks? I don't know. But, you know, even with him, it's more like, can you at least reduce your portion?
Yeah.
You know, just reduce your portion. At bare minimum, do that. I'm not asking you to do huge things. I'm not asking you to not eat the things that you love, but just reduce your portions at least. So I love your approach. And yes, eat your traditional foods, but can we switch out, you know, to reduce the fat, to reduce the salt, to reduce the starchy carbohydrates, and add more veggies to that meal? So you're right. It's simple, but not sometimes easy, because people are like, oh, but this is the way you're supposed to. But no, if your health matters to you and you don't want to take medication, then this is what you're going to do, and it tastes just as delicious.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what is number 2 on the list?
Number 2 on the list is to move more. So again, it's getting people to understand that 9 times out of 10 they're leading sedentary lifestyles, because if you're getting that diagnosis of diabetes, you're more likely to be overweight, in that overweight category. Not always. If it's a genetic predisposition that you have for getting pre-diabetes or diabetes, then you won't necessarily be, you know, overweight. You could still be slim, but then you also have the visceral fat, which is fat around your organs that people can't see. That
skinny fat.
What do you call it?
We call that skinny fat.
Skinny
where
fat,
they look slim, but they are fat on the inside, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's going to be one or the other. Like it won't be that they won't have it at all. It will either just be hidden, or it will be very visible that, you know, they need to lose the weight. So moving more for me is the next thing that's going to help to reduce the weight or get rid of that internal visceral fat around the organs. So cardiovascular exercise is a great place to start. You know, 20 minutes consecutive exercise, where you're out of breath consistently for 20 minutes every single day is a great way to start. If you combine that with the healthy eating, you will find that you know, you lose the weight. The weight will come off. And you're also burning a lot of that, you know, the carbohydrates and all the fats that you're consuming. You're burning them off as well, so you're less likely to put on more weight, and it just reduces your risk factors. So the second thing is move more, cardiovascular exercise to start. Ideally, if people start doing strengthening training as well, that helps to lose, you know, you lose it much faster as well. So but then I think that's a sort of second, third stage when somebody's already started on the journey. I think this is just getting people started.
Oh, 100%. And I love that, because especially nowadays, since the pandemic, we were walking a lot more when we had to walk out of our house, walk into our car, you know, walk into the office, walk to get coffee, walk to the washroom, walk back. So there was a lot more walking we used to do pre-pandemic, where so many of us now work from home. So our walking is, you know, cut in half, really, or then some. And, you know, because the walk to Starbucks or to grab a coffee was a lot longer than the walk to your kitchen to grab a coffee, right? Or the walk to down the hall to use the washroom, whereas, you know, your office, the washroom's right there. It's like 5 steps away. So really the walking, I truly believe that is a wonderful place to start. And the fact that it's been already reduced in half or more than that, since so many of us have pivoted and are now, you know, working from home, it makes complete sense. Even just, I say to my clients, even if you're working from home after lunch, even if you just do a walk around your block, that could take 10 minutes, and then do another walk around your block after dinner, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's as simple as that for those that are super brand new to working out or are not consistent with working out. And it's funny, some, you know, some clients, I'm sure that you've experienced that, where it's like they don't even know where to begin. Well,
No.
you know how to walk. You
Yeah.
can, that's where you begin. There's nothing scary
Exactly.
about walking,
Yeah.
right? Stick on a podcast like the Get Crystallized show, educate
Yeah.
yourself, go for your power walk, and there's your movement. So I love it.
Absolutely.
I love 20 minutes a day. I'm in total agreement with you. I think that's a wonderful place to start. So what's the last one to round out your three
The
things?
last one is to lose the weight around the belly. So
Yeah.
that fat around your belly is the number one risk factor, like the highest risk factor actually for you getting diabetes.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they hear that, think, oh, I just need to do loads of sit-ups and crunches and core exercises. And actually, they're not going to lose it by just doing that. And that's the misconception, which is why I wanted to highlight, although, you know, actually by eating healthier, by moving more, you can lose it. But I wanted to put emphasis on it because that is the number one risk factor for people developing diabetes. And if you can lose it around there, then your risk factors go down considerably, which is why I don't know if you've ever, I don't know what they do in out there in North America, but here, when you get tested for diabetes, they will also test, you know, they will measure your waist circumference and the circumference around your stomach, because that increases your risk factors for getting diabetes. So again, it's just dispelling that myth that you just need to do a load of crunches and you'll get rid of it. That's not going to work.
If it was that easy, Gabs, we wouldn't have a job, honestly. Like 1,000 crunches. Yeah, no, it's not going to do it. But you know what? Great point. Because I've noticed too, those that are pre-diabetic or have diabetes, like even within my own family, the belly fat around their waist is hard. And that scares me so much. Your stomach is hard as a rock. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, your poor heart. Like, so
absolutely. It increases your risk of heart disease, you know, and if you do end up with a diagnosis of diabetes, then your risk factors for heart attacks and strokes just
100%.
goes up considerably. So, you know, if you can stop that progression into diabetes, if you can reverse a diagnosis of pre-diabetes, you're not only going to have a more energetic, healthier life, you're going to prolong your life and you're going to have a better quality of life, you know, because you'll live for a lot longer. Your risk factors for having a heart attack or a stroke also will go down as well. So it's the benefits completely outweigh the risks, you know.
100%. And, you know, I've seen with my own eyes, through family members, what diabetes has done to them, from gout, you know, to not even be able to walk, affecting their eyesight, and like, Lord forbid, you know, like you said, a heart attack. And so, you know, I really think that this is such an important conversation. And these three simple but not necessarily easy tips, if like, I love that you said, yeah, quantity, you're extending the amount of years, but it's also so that you can live a quality of life. Because like, to live always having to take medications and needles and not, you know, having the energy to enjoy your family, hikes, swimming, biking, whatever it may be, because you're overweight, because you know, of the heart disease and all that. I mean, your quality of life is just, I think, to me, is way more important than, it is the most important thing.
Absolutely. And the risk factors actually are really key. So not only, you know, the things that you mentioned, heart attack, strokes, gout, but like you said, it affects your eyesight. You can lose your eyesight. It affects your kidneys. You know, you can end up on dialysis. You can get gangrene because your blood, if your blood is sugary, and you get, you know, you have to go for regular foot checks when you're diabetic, because actually if you get a little cut on your foot, and you know, and your blood is sugary, that's an ideal place for infections. And people have had amputations with diabetes because they haven't been able to control the infections in their blood. So, you know, if you think about your quality of life in that sense, imagine, you know, having to go for dialysis every week or every 2 or 3 days. Imagine, you know, losing a limb. Imagine losing your eyesight. Like these are the extremes, but they're very real risks that can happen if you don't take care of yourself. And if somebody gives you a lifeline and says to you that there is a chance for you to reverse this, you know, I mean, I would grab it with both. I would grab it with my whole self, you know, like.
Well, here's the thing. I know I'm going to have listeners who are like, oh my goodness, I need to do something about this, because they will either do something because they're scared or they'll ignore it. And I'm hoping that they have listened to this podcast, you know, and watch this video and are realizing, okay, that's enough. I need to do something. So if they want to work with you, Gups, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Facebook, on my personal page. I've also got a business page on Facebook called Healthy Habits by Gupinder Sayan. If you want to get in touch and have a conversation, message me on Messenger. I have a website as well. The link again is on my Facebook page. So please
Healthy Habits by Gupinder Sayan.
That's correct.
And that's SYAN.
SYAN, yeah.
Okay, good. And I'll put that in the copy as well. So I always like to finish off with my guests on my show with 2 questions. So the first question is, who is your biggest mentor?
Wow, that's a big question, because this year I've had several in my life. And I have to say, Coach Crystal, you are up there in the top 3 for absolutely 100%. You've been there on a journey with me. I don't think I'm not recognizable to myself. So I'm sure that for you to have seen that transition from January this year up until now, we're in July of this year, you know, the transformation has been just incredible. So it has to be you.
I've always believed in you, and I truly believe now you believe in you. And that was the key. And lastly, what is the legacy that you want to leave?
Wow, gosh, the legacy that I want to leave is that I helped thousands of millions of people in the world to reverse their diagnosis of prediabetes, because it's such a killer. It's on the increase, it's on the rise. And for me to have that footprint in life, to have helped that many people to reverse it so that they don't suffer with all the complications that we've talked about in this podcast, that for me is like, that would fulfill my purpose of being on the planet. So yeah, that's what I'd love to do.
You are well on your way.
Thank you.
And I believed in you from day one. And so I've got your back, and I know that you will touch so many people's lives, help reverse diabetes. And I believe in your purpose. I think that, you know, again, it's very rare to hear those with a medical background or pharmaceutical background to really push this healthy lifestyle and mindset and habits. And I think it's beautiful. And that's why I've always said, yes, you have to do this, because it's needed. It's needed now more than ever. So I want to thank you so much for being on my show. Such a powerful message, really great tips and reminders for those who, yeah, I really need to bite the bullet. I know what to do, but I'm not doing it. I have to do it. I have to do it for your quality of life. So thank you so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you so much for having me, Coach Crystal. And like I said, you know, this is the time to do something about it, you know, get in touch. And yes. Thank you so much.
100%. Thank you all for listening to this episode. I know that you had a ton of value from it. And again, if you want to work with Gups, I'll put her website in the link. And until next time, we'll see you on the Get Crystallized Show. Have an amazing day, everybody.
Bye, everyone.